Good evening, everyone. Today we're looking at financial reporting, and our topic will be IAS36 Impairment of Assets. Impairment of assets. I want to say impairment of assets. So in with this standard, which is impairment, is a standard that talk about that is a non-current asset or non-current asset. And how non-current asset, how do we say is it being impaired? That means we are talking I say non-current assets can be impaired when the carrying amount is higher than the recoverable value. That is the major um, item that we discussed under this standard. Now, what is the let's look at the introduction to this standard. The objective of the standard is IS36 applies to all tangible, intangible, and financial assets. So that means this standard talks about tangible, intangible, and financial assets, except inventories rising from construction contracts, deferred tax assets rising and assets rising under IAS 19 employment benefit and financial assets within the scope of 32 financial instruments. So this is because those IASs already have rules for recognizing and measuring impairment. So you're saying that all the standards we just listed, they have their own rules on how they recognize impairments. So when you talk about current assets, e.g., like inventory, it has its own rules. How they measured impairment. Receivables have its own rules. How we measured impairment. Now, not also the this is because no note also that IS36 does not apply to non-current assets held for sales, which are debts with under IFRS 5. So we don't apply impairment under IFRS 5. Now, definition of terms. This standard defines some terms. One, impairment loss. What is impairment loss? So it's the amount by which the assets or is the amount by which the carrying amount of an asset exceed its recoverable amount. So this is what we need to understand according to IS36. What is carrying amount and what is recoverable amount, and how we recognize impairment. Now, recoverable amount itself we said is the higher of an asset fair value less cost of disposal and its value in use. That means we've broken it down, now saying that your recovery amount is now your fair value less cost to sell and your value in use. Now, what is fair value? Fair value is this is different from those treated in the IFRS 13. It's a price that would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between market participants at the measurement date. So value in use is the present value of the future cash flows expected to be derived from an asset. I mean, the value in use is the present value of the future cash flow, which is the future income you are saying you want to derive from an asset. When you look at the present value now, is your value in use. This time I want to talk about cash generating unit, which we called CGU. That is the smallest identifiable group of assets that generates cash inflows that are largely independent of the cash flows from other assets or groups of assets. Now, when we say cash generating units, I think cash generating units they are the smallest identifiable group of assets that generates cash inflows separately from the company's asset as a whole. So we said now. So, for example, I normally use the ATM gallery as an example of cash generating unit. So you know this, they are different from the normal operating assets of or the normal assets of the company. That they generate incomes separately from the bank itself. That means, for example, GTB Express is a cash generating unit. It's house when you go to some GTB Express, you see chairs there. Chairs are non-current assets. You see ATM machines there. They will have eight air conditioner there. So all these are cash generating units matched together because they are different group of assets. So we said they generate income separately from the company as a whole. Now this time I talk about the basic rules. What is the rule of this impairment? You should understand it. When you understand the rules of impairment, when they give you any question, you understand how to treat or account for an impairment. We said all assets at the end of each reporting period, an entity should assess whether there is an indication that an asset or casualty unit may be impaired. So at the end of each financial year, you should assess the group of the assets and its group of assets of the entity. If there's any indication that it's okay, they have impaired or there's a damage to that asset, it have reduced the operating capacity of that asset. So you say that asset has been impaired. So annually, you should always check for impairment of an asset. If any such indication exists, the entity should estimate the recoverable amount of the asset. So when you look at such indication and you see that there is impairment of that asset, the next thing you should do is to calculate the recoverable amount. So if no significant or possible impairment loss are present, there is no need to make a formal estimate of recoverable amount except the certain intangible assets. Intangible assets. Now we say intangible assets. Intangible assets is covered by IAS 38. So the following intangible assets must be tested annually for impairment, regardless of whether there is any indication of impairment. So you always test this annually. So that means this intangible asset does not follow the normal basic rules of impairment. That means normally look at the indication first before you now look at the recovery amount. But this intangible asset, you must always tell for impairment annually, even when there is indication or there is no indication. One, those with an infinite useful life. So you should look at those with an infinite useful life. For example, those that with an infinite useful life is goodwill or any asset that is used forever that does not have a specific amortization. Those not yet available for use. So assets under construction, or for example, a software under construction. You usually test for impairment of that sort software. Goodwill acquired in a business combination. This is a purchase goodwill. Where an intangible asset with an indefinite life forms part of cash generating unit and cannot be separated. That cash generating unit must be tested for impairments at least annually. At least annually. Now, indications of potential impairment loss. Any asset should consider the following indications of potential impairment loss, both external and internal. So you always step for indication. An indication might be external and might be what? Internal. So in our exam, it is state indication of impairment. So you are not told internally or you're not told externally. You can just list any one of the two, both internally or externally. Now let's go to the external indication. What are those external factors that we say, okay, this asset has been impaired? This asset, its recovery amount is lower than the carrying amount. So what are those factors? We say one, the market value. When there is a single drop in market value, or expected passage of time. So we said that asset has been impaired. A significant change in the technology, market, legal, and economic environment of the business in which the assets are employed. So we say the asset has been what impaired. That is a significant change, an adverse change. An increase in market interest rates or market rates of return on investment likely to affect the discount rate used in calculating value in use. The kind amount or the kind value of the entity's net asset being more than its market capitalization. So your net value, we say the asset has been impaired. So let's look at external factor again. In our note, what are the internal source of information? One, evidence is available of obsolescence or physical damage. So when you have an asset, a building, for example, and there's evidence that the building has been cracked or been damaged, so that means that building is being impaired. A significant adverse change have taken place during the period or are expected to take place in the near future in the extent to which or manner in which an asset is being used or expected to be used. So whether is an adverse change in how you use assets, and the asset has been impaired. And evidence is available from internal report that indicates that the economic performance of an asset or will be worse than expected. So there is evidence that okay, the economic performance of that asset will dropped. That means if the asset produce 500 units of a particular product, you're not told that it will produce 400 units. That means the asset has been impaired. So we should look at let's look at the measurement of recoverable amount. Measurement of recoverable amount. So how do you measure recoverable amount? I will measure recoverable amount. Now, recoverable amount. The general principles is that recoverable amount is the higher of. So when you say recoverable amount, you must understand recoverable amount is the higher of your of the asset fair value less cost of disposal and what the value in use. So she was able to determine fair value less cost of disposal and what the value in use. It it is not always necessary and to measure both an asset fair value less cost of disposal and its value in use to determine the asset recoverable amount. So you are saying that it's not always necessary to measure both before you know the recoverable amount of an asset. What are we saying? We are saying that the an asset might have might use only the fair value cost of disposal to be to be the recoverable amount, to be the what the recoverable amount. Now let's talk about fair value less cost of disposal. Now the fair value according to IAS 13 is that the fair value is the price would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between market participants and the measurement date. What the active market, what is an active market? Because a market in which transaction for the asset or liability take place with sufficient frequency and volume to provide pricing information on an ongoing basis. So this active market is being discussed extensively in IFRS. That's it. What is cost of disposal? Now, cost for disposal are incremental costs directly attributable to the disposal of an asset, excluding finance costs, income tax expense, and any cost which has already been incurred as a liability. Examples include legal costs, stamp duty, cost of removing the asset, other direct incremental costs to bring an asset into condition for its sales. So all this, so we said these are what your cost of what disposal, cost of disposal, value in use. Now, what is value in use? So value in use is the present value of the future cash flows expected to be derived from an asset. So your value in use, estimating it involve, so for you to get your value in use, you must understand these uh, uh, um these items. One, estimating estimating the future cash flows or cash inflows and outflows to be derived from continued use of the asset and from its ultimate disposal. So you must know the cash inflow and outflow of the asset when you continue to use that such an asset. Two, applying the appropriate discount rates. Applying the appropriate discount rates. Four, value value in use differs from fair value in that it is more entity specific, whereas fair value only reflects the assumption that market participants would use. That would say fair value talk about the market participants. What is how will you arrive at the price of an asset between the seller and the market, which is the buyer? So it's always between the market participants. But value in use is always an internal factor. That means you can use your internal parameter to determine it. That means if an asset cannot be used internally, or you can only sell the market in the sell the asset in the market. That means you cannot calculate the value in use. You can only calculate the fair value of that asset. Fair value would not normally reflect the following factors. So when you're calculating fair value, you don't put these following factors into consideration. Now, one, additional value derived from the grouping of assets. Synergies between the asset being measured and other assets. Legal rights or restrictions that are specific solely to the current owner of the asset. Then tax benefits or bonding that are specific to the current owner of the asset. Estimate of future cash flows should include. Now, we want to estimate the future cash flows. How do you estimate future cash flows? So these are things you should put into consideration in order to arrive at the future cash flows. Projected cash inflows, including disposal proceed. Projected cash outflows that are necessarily in, incurred to generate the cash inflows from continued use of the assets. Estimates of future cash flows exclude should exclude exclude one. Now, if you want to estimate the future cash flows, this item should not be included when you're estimating your future cash outflows. One, the cash flow relating to the improvement or enhancement of the asset performance. So these are capitalized costs. These are costs that should be capitalized. So they should not be part of your cash outflows. Cash flows that are expected to arise from a future restructuring that is not yet. So cash now that need to be arise as a future restructuring. This should be a provision. Cash outflows that will be required to settle obligations that have already been recognized as liability. So this should be net should be debited to your provisions. So if you want to settle a liability that you have already been debited before, or be expense before, or make a liability before. So she be debited to the liability account. Cash inflows or outflows from financing activities. From financing activity. Then E, income tax receipts or payment. So these are already been taken account of in discounting. The discount rate is a market determined rate. So our discount rates, I say all these items are already been taken in cost of what? Discounting. So say the discount rate is our market determined rate. So in our exam question, we'll be giving the discounted rate. The discount rate. So most cases we will not be allowed to complete it. We'll be giving the discount rate. So our discount rate might be any of these three items. So one, the discount rate should reflect the current market assessment of the time value of money and the risk specific to the asset. The when an asset specific rate is not available from the market, an entity uses a surrogate to estimate the discount rate as a starting point. The entities may take into account the following rates. So you can take into account the following rates. One, the entity weighted average cost of capital determined using the techniques such as the capital asset pricing model. The entity's incremental borrowing rate. So you can use the borrowing rate, the interest rate you borrowed, or other market borrowing rates. Or other market borrowing rates. So let's look at this illustration one. So this illustration one talk about Blackpool. So we are giving 3 minutes to read this illustration one and digest it. So, so this illustration one, um, the Blackpool has a kind amount of 300,000. So let's look at requirements. Calculate the re- the recoverable amount, the recoverable amount, the recoverable amount. Now, suggested solution. Suggested solution. Now, our recoverable amount, our recoverable amount is the higher of value in use and what fair value less cost to sell. So how did I arrive at my value in use? So these are the workings here. Now the value in use, we said when you discount all your future um cash inflows, is your what? Is your value in use. Is your value in use. So our cash inflows are given to us for the 3 years, 150, 100, and 50. So these are the cash inflows. And they were given a discount rate, which is what? 10%. That is 10%. So it's 10%. And in year three, you are given the scrap value, which is a scrap value is part of the future cash inflows, which is 25,000. So by the time you look at the net present value, is what? 275,357. This is your this is your value in use. Now, what is your fair value less cost to sell? You are given the fair value. You are told that an offer an offer has been received to buy the machine immediately for 240,000 naira. But the company would have to pay shipping costs of 5,000 naira. So the amount that was the way the asset will be purchased in the market is 240,000, which is your what? The fair value. Now, and you will less your cost of disposal, which is your shipping cost, because you want to sell the asset, you must incur your shipping cost of 5,000 naira. So your fair value less cost of disposal is so your fair value less cost of disposal is 235,000. 235,000. When you look at 235,000 with your value in use, you find that the fair value the recovery amount is what? 275,357 naira. So let's look at this illustration two. Now this illustration two is a little bit technical. This illustration two, we, are, we need to know how to calculate our what value in use when we are giving so many um figures. Now PSV Limited is testing a machine which which makes a product called union. For impairment, it has compiled the following information in respect of the machine. So we are giving the selling price, which is 100 naira. The variable cost of production is what? 70 naira. And the fixed overhead allocation per unit. We said what? Fixed overhead allocation per unit, which is 10 naira. Which is 10 naira. And we are giving the packing cost per unit, which is what? 1 naira. So when you look at them now we are told that we are told that all costs and revenue are expected to inflate at um, at 3 naira per annum. Volume growth volume growth is expected to be 4% per annum. 1,000 units were sold last year. This is in excess of the long-term rates of growth in the industry. The management of PSV Limited valued have valid reasons for projecting this level of growth. The machine originally cost 400,000 naira and was supplied on credit terms from a fellow group entity. PSB Limited is charged 15,000 naira per annum for this load. Future expenditure. So again, the future expenditure in year two, in year two, in year two, that's year two. In year two time, the machine will be subject to major servicing to maintain its operating capacity. To maintain its operating capacity. This will cost 10,000 naira. This will cost what? 10,000 naira. In year three time, the machine will be modified to improve its capacity. To what? Improve its what? Capacity. This improvement will cost 20,000 naira and will reduce unit variable cost by 15%. By 15%. The asset will be sold in 8 years time. Currently, 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 the scrap value of machine of similar time is 10,000 naira. All values are given in real term, as is to exclude inflation. You are now required. You are required. Identify, identify, identify the cash flows that should be included in PSV Limited estimate estim in PSV Limited in PSD Limited estimation of the value in use of the asset. Explain the rationale of the inclusion or exclusion of each amount. So this question I will use to explain some items that does not form part of your value in use, and those ones that also form part of your value in use. So please let's follow up. And now your value in use, as we all know. So they said we should identify the cash flow that should be included in what in PSV in order to estimate this value in use. Now the cash flow that we included is that, remember that we are giving inflation rate. So we must know the inflation rate. We must know the year one value, year two value, year three value. So we are not told to look for the present value, which is the value used itself. We're not giving the discounted factor. So we just want to know the years and the cash flows and the cash flow of each year that will be used when you calculate your value in use. Now, in year one, in year one, you are given the cost per unit, which is the cash. You are want to calculate what the cost per unit. Now the cost per unit are given the selling price, which is 100 naira. Now we have the variable production. Variable production cost is identified when calculating the value in use, which is your variable production overhead, is 70 naira. Now fixed overhead allocation per unit. This is not part of our value in use, because these expenses is not directly related to that machine. So it will be expense in our operating in our P&L account. So fixed overhead allocation per unit is not part, but packing cost per unit, this is part because it's directly related to the what, to the product, which is union. So then what is your income, which is your future cash inflow annually, annually every year from the um the union. So it's 100 minus 70 minus 1 naira, which is what, 27 naira. It's 27 naira. And we are told that all these figures are given excluding inflation. And we are told that there will be inflation in year one. There will be inflation in year one. So because there is inflation in year one, and we are told that the inflation that relate to inflow and cost is 3%. So remember that this is the cost per unit. So 3% will be used related to cost per unit. 3% will use related to cost per unit. So now the formula is always one. It will be the future value will be, which is FV, which is future value, equals to the annual cost, which is A, open in bracket 1 plus R raised to power n, which is number of years. So that is our formula for the future value. So now this is the annual income that we receive annually, which is annuity, which is 29. We are told that there will be inflation in every year. So the value, the future value of 29 a year will increase. So that's the reason why I now put this value there, which is 29 open in bracket 1 plus 0.3% is by 1, give us 29.87. So and the volume also, we say volume will be increased. We are told that volume will be increased by 4%. So and 1,000 units by 4%. So this is the volume that we have. So by studying it, you find out that our volume will increase. Then our total cost, which is the total cash inflows and or outflows, is always our A times B. B is our volume. So A times B, we have 31,065 naira. So that is how we have our influence year 8. Now, in additional information, we are told that remember that this 400,000 is not part of your future cash flow because 400,000 is the original cost of the asset. So 400,000 will form part of the cost that will be capitalized with the what? With the machine, not part of the income from the product. It will be capitalized with the machine. Why this the charge of 15,000, which is the amount borrowed, the interest will be part of your what will be expense in your profit or loss account as of finance cost. Always remember that your finance charge is not part of your future cash flow or your value in use and your fair value. Now we are told that in year two we are giving a major servicing to maintain its operating capacity. Now this is part of your cost for value in use because the 10,000 is to maintain the operating capacity. That's the reason why I include it here at servicing, which is 10,000. It's part of your future cash flow in year two. So I put it there. So you now have the cost of this. Now, but in year three, you are told that the machine will be modified to improve its efficiency. This improvement will cost 20,000 and we reduce unit costs by 50%. So when you look at this year three cost, you will find out that this year three cost it improve the operating capacity or reduce the cost that will be incurred in that machine. That means this 20,000 should be capitalized. It should be capitalized, not for part of your value in use. So any about that we are told that will improve the operating capacity of a machine, that particular item should be capitalized with the machine. Why in year 8 we are told that we have year 8 we are told that we have a scrap value. Scrap value is your future cash inflow. So and we are told that all these figures are excluding inflation. That's the reason why we look for the future value at year 8 without inflate it. So when you inflate the figure, you will have 12,668 naira. Now, like all this said, we should be able to understand our recoverable amount, which is our value in use and our fair value less cost to sell. So we should be able to know what constitutes fair value less cost to sell and our recoverable amount. Now, the summary of the approach. Now, how we account for impairment. That is why I give all this summary. How we account for impairment. Impairment of an asset should be identified and accounted for as follows. One, at the end of each reporting period, The entity should assess whether there are any indication that an asset may be impaired. So we have two indications. So in our exam, you must ask us say the external indication of impairment and internal indication of impairment. You should know the internal and external indication of impairment. Two, if there are such indications, the entity should estimate the asset recoverable amount. So the recovery amount is always what you estimate. So using your fair value less cost to sell and your value in use. So our recoverable amount is based on our fair value and our value in use. When the recoverable amount is less than the carrying value of an asset, the entity should reduce the carrying value to its recoverable amount, the amount by which the value of the asset is being written down is an impairment loss. So when the recoverable amount is now lower than your carrying amount, that means that asset has been impaired. That asset has been impaired. So the difference between your recoverable amount and a carrying amount is your impairment loss. And this loss, the impairment loss is recognized as a loss for the period. So the loss must be taken to your under your administration cost as an impairment. However, you should know this. However, however, if the impairment loss, if the impairment loss relate to an asset that has previously been revalued upward, it is first offset against any remaining evaluation surplus for that asset. Then this when this happens, it is reported as other comprehensive income for the period as a negative value and not charged against profit. Now, we are saying that if this impairment, because we said when there is an impairment loss, you should take it to your as a loss under your admin expenses. But when this impairment loss relate to an asset that was previously revalued under your IAS 16, we said an asset might be carried whether in two model. Either you carry it at cost or through revaluation model. Now under the revaluation model, if an asset is revalued upward, you are going to credit it in your other comprehensive income. Now if such an asset is not impaired, what we're saying is that you first of all go and debit your other comprehensive income, which is your evaluation account, to the tune of the previous evaluation surplus. Then if there is any um increase or if it's higher than the surplus, the balance will now be taken to your admin expenses. Depreciation charge for the impaired assets in future period should be adjusted to allocate the asset revised carrying amount minus any residual value over its remaining useful life. So under this, now let's look at what we call cash generating unit. Cash generating unit. Cash generating unit. A cash generating unit is the smallest identifiable group of assets, the smallest identifiable group of assets that generate cash inflows that are largely independent of the cash inflows from other assets or group of assets. As I explained earlier, I said this cash generating unit, they are a group of assets that they generate their own inflows separately from the total group the total group of assets of that entity. So cash generating units should has their own. You should you should impair them, or you should test for impairment separately from other group of assets. It is not always possible to calculate the recoverable amount of individual assets. The value in use often has to be calculated for group of assets because assets may not generate cash flows in isolation from each others. An asset that is potentially impaired may be part of a larger group of assets which form a cash generating unit. IAS36 defines a cash generating unit as the smallest identifiable group of assets that generate cash inflows that are largely independent of the cash inflows from from um from other assets or group of assets. Now, this standard talks about this standard talks about goodwill under cash generating unit. So let's understand the meaning of goodwill under cash generating unit. Said goodwill, the existence of cash generating units may be particularly relevant to goodwill acquired in a business combination. So the standard also um prohibits internally generated goodwill except goodwill from what business purchased. Business purchase. Purchase goodwill must be reviewed for impairment annually, and the value of goodwill cannot be estimated in isolation. That means you cannot goodwill. They are intangible assets. You cannot identify them. You cannot measure them differently from the whole group of assets of that company or from the company as a whole. So you cannot always measure goodwill separately because you cannot see it. So how can you measure something that you cannot see? So that's the reason why if something happens to the company and the company has goodwill in the financial statement, there is an adverse implication on the company or an adverse transaction that affects the performance of the company or affects customer loyalty to that company. So we said the first asset that we remove is what goodwill. It may be possible to allocate purchase goodwill across several cash generating units. If allocation is not possible, the impairment reviewed is carried out in two stages. One, carry out an impairment review on each of the cash generating units, excluding a goodwill, and recognize any impairment loss that has arisen. Now, for cash generating units, you should carry the impairment on each of the assets. That means each asset in that cash unit. So if anyone does not impaired, you cannot allocate impairment to that asset. Two, when carrying amount of an asset reviewed for the entity as a whole, include the goodwill. Now, when there is goodwill in that asset, so you can also do impairment for the company for the CGU as a whole. Now, then how do you allocate impairment in a CGU? Allocating an impairment, allocating an impairment or impairment loss to the asset of a cash generating unit. When an impairment loss arises on a cash generating unit, the impairment loss is allocated across the assets of the cash generating units in the following order. So please, let's understand how to allocate this impairment. It's very, very important how to allocate impairment. Now, one, the first thing you have to do, the first approach is to the goodwill allocated to the CGU. So when in a CGU, in a CGU you have furniture, you have plant and machinery, you have air conditioning, and you have goodwill. And the CGU you test for impairment as a whole for the CGU, and there is impairment. That means the recovery amount is now lower. We said the first thing that you must leave, that you must write off, is the goodwill. So you will write off the goodwill first. You write off the goodwill first. Then next, to the other assets in the car generating unit on a pro rata basis. That means after you remove the goodwill, the next thing is to is to prorate it. That means you prorate it. That means the remaining the remaining impairment loss, you will share it among um other assets. So you share it. That mean of prorating it, or you share it. So that is that is in proportion to the kind amount of the asset of the kind generating unit. So you share it using the kind amount of the kind generating unit to share. However, the kind amount of an asset should not be reduced below higher of higher of its higher of its fair value less cost of disposal. Is what? Its fair value less cost of disposal, and two, its value in use. Then yes, and three, zero. What I'm saying, we are saying that when you want to produce, when you want to share it, if a particular asset has its own recoverable amount or revalued amount or its fair value, let's go to see, you cannot impair that asset below its own recoverable amount or below its own um fair value, let's go to sell, and value in use. And in any circumstances, an asset must not become negative after you prorate it. So you cannot have a negative asset. That means it must be what? Zero. Now let's and the other thing that you should understand is that as I said before that this standard covered intangible assets and tangible assets and what and financial assets. Now it does not cover current assets. Mostly current assets like inventory, because inventory has its own way of value impairment. So when you see inventory in a CGU, you don't impair that inventory. Um, Another thing is that your trade receivables is not impairment, is bad debt. So when there is no bad debt, they not forecast any bad debt or any irrecoverable debt. So that is not impaired. So current asset is not always impaired. So um let's look at this illustration four. This four. Illustration four. Now this is the CGU. A car generating unit comprises the following. We have building 30. We have plant and machinery 6. We have goodwill 10. We have current asset 20. The following a recession, an impairment review has estimated that the recoverable amount of CGU is 50 million naira. And the recoverable amount is 50 million. Why? Meanwhile, the carrying amount is what? 66 million. So there is an impairment of what? 16 million. So our impairment is what? 16 million, which is the carrying amount and the recoverable amount. Sorry, the carrying amount and the recoverable amount. Carrying amount and recoverable amount. So recoverable amount. So our recoverable amount, our recoverable amount, which is 50. 66 minus 50, we have 16. Oh, so our impairment loss will be what? 16. Sorry. Our impairment loss is 16. So our impairment loss is 16. Now, so how do we allocate this 16 million which is the impairment? Firstly, we said is to goodwill. So we remove goodwill by 10 million. So the revalue amount of goodwill is now nil. So no more goodwill. When you remove 10 million from 16 million, you have 6 million. Now the 6 million will be allocated proportionately to building and what plant and equipment. So not on a current asset. So by the time you prorate it, we have the 6 million over the kind amount which, of building goodwill. So your building which is 30 over 36, which is both the other CGU building plus plant and equipment. So we have 5 million. Let's say from 30 million, we have 25 million. Then same thing, you now have 5 million for plant and equipment. So this is allocation allocate allocating the impairment loss to the asset. So please let's look at this assignment for me. I will submit it. I will submit the assignment um in our next class. Then our next class we will look at the subsequent review of impairment. So we can read it. We can read it up. Then we'll look at these two questions. Then we call it a day. So please, um, always endeavor to solve and solve our assignment. Attempt the assignment. So that is how we will do. If actually you understand the standard or the topic or not. Good night. We have come to the end of the class.